Namaste. In two videos, I talked about open source, the philosophy, the degrees of freedom, and the licensing mechanism that open source software commonly uses, the 10 conditions that open source software has to comply with. But you might have the question that if it is something that you give away freely, and so how does it lead to creation of quality software? Why would people want to just build something and throw away freely? Does it really make sense? Will it work for meaningful kind of software? So you should take a look at this little book called The Cathedral and the Bazaar. Basically, it is referring to two models of software development from Eric Raymond, which is one of the early proponents of open source. It's available freely on the internet. You can download it. So there is one basic mechanism that he talks about. It's called open source software development starts with scratching one's itch. When you have a itch on your body, I mean, you will scratch it, and you're not doing it for money, or you're not doing it because somebody is asking you to do, because it is your itch. What does that mean? You have a requirement. You want some task to be automated, you want some application to be developed, okay, and for your requirement, right, your office requirement, your personal requirement, that is your itch. Okay, and you are doing it for your own requirement, your own efficiency, or proper usage in your office or whatever. So therefore you would want to do a very good job of it, because if your software is faulty, buggy and all that, you will have a problem in using it. So the work starts with one my own requirement for which I build something, and then I say, okay, I have done this, and it is a useful. It appears to be a useful, piece of code. So I put it up online and say, look, anybody who want to use it can make use of it. Okay, and then somebody else might be looking for something similar, and he finds it, and he says, okay, this software is actually pretty close to what I want, but it doesn't have some features, some requirements are not there, but otherwise it is useful. So he says, okay, it's open source, so I can download it. I look at it and say, well, these two features I can add. Right now, he is adding the features again, not because somebody is asking him to do, but because his requirement needs those capabilities. So he goes and adds those features, and he would again do a very good job of it because he is doing it for his own requirement. And that updated version, he would again release it back to the community or to the public at large through the same mechanism. And slowly, the software grows. I mean, so I remember, the Moodle software, which is now very popular, very well-established learning management system, started as a small PhD thesis, implementation for that, and then a lot of people contributed, built, added modules and capabilities and all that. Today, it's a world-class learning management system. Similarly, Audacity for audio, and plenty of them. Maybe sometime I will actually talk about some of these examples. So this mechanism of scratching one's itch, so that basically saying I am doing the development for my requirement, and I am contributing it as a philosophy because I believe that what I have done may be useful to others, so I might actually just give it away to others also, and they will build on it. Okay, so this is also kind of like what Steve Jobs had told, that you build something which you can use or you want to use, and you others will start using it. So when you do something for others and which you are not interested, that quality will actually show negatively on what has been produced. Okay, so this philosophy is very important, that the development is happening because I want to do it and for my requirement. Okay, the second point is that Why would I want to, involve other people, or why won't I release it to other people? They are my, what should I say, well-wisher community. They are my supporting community, because the effort that they would have had to invest in building that software, I am saving it to them. So they don't have to invest that much effort from scratch to build a software. I'm actually giving them something to them. In return, what do I get? I get because these softwares are going to be used by a large number of people, for either somebody who's interested in a development side, or somebody who is interested in using that system for meeting their requirement. The later group, the users, are actually the ones who will say, okay, but it is not working for this particular case, which is also valid, but it's not there. Maybe it's not supported in the software, or there is a bug in the software, or it doesn't, this capability is not, functional, or there is an error here. So the user community is actually part of your family. They are very useful to find problems. Now, unlike a proprietary software, they don't actually come and shout at you saying that, look, your software has bugs and that is this, etc. But they actually report it to the platform where these things are hosted. Okay, and so as a developers, you look at it and say, okay, yes, this could be a problem. This could be something that you give a clarification, or you track down and fix the problem. And those of us in software development know that identifying a bug is half the job of fixing it. Because usually the fix is not the complexity, the complication is precisely being able to characterize it. Now, there are also a lot of developer people who might be in your people who are downloading your software and making use of it. They might be helpful to not only to identify bugs like users do, but when somebody flags a bug, they might be able to track down and say, oh, that is because I think the initialization has not actually taken into taken into account this condition. So this family, the spread out in world spread family is actually helping to find the bugs, to suggest features, to suggest corrections that is required to fix the bug, and maybe sometimes even contribute an enhancement. So this concern of opening it up to the whole community is very critical. So Raymond actually talks about this saying, with enough eyeballs, all bugs become shallow, which means that if you put up something and there are hundreds of people looking at it, any problem in that would be noticed by somebody or the other. When you look at something that you have written, you possibly won't find most of the bugs, because you are usually reading what you have in mind and not what is actually there on the screen or on the machine, right? I mean, this you would have seen when you proofread an article. If you have read an article, you should get it proofread by somebody else, because you will read from your mind and not what is actually on the paper. So this philosophy opens up saying, okay, if you can involve a lot of people, you will be able to track down bugs much easier, and which is why open source software stabilizes very fast, because as soon as it's released, there are literally hundreds of people who downloads it, checks it out, and reports problems, suggests fixes, and whatever. Okay, and because of this mechanism, the fix also happens very fast. So which means that a bug is reported maybe within an hour, or maybe half day, the revised version of the software is back on release. Okay, so this is also, you can see, it is not forced or commercial mechanism that is being used. It is a natural consequence of this collective interest in that piece of software. So with enough eyeballs, all bugs are shallow. And Raymond says, you should actually treat your users as part of your development community for this reason. Okay, now this leads to the third important philosophy which is talked about, is called release early, release often. So again, if you start developing something and you do work for, let's say, 6 months, 8, 9 months, or 1 year, and then go and release it. Okay. So, as opposed to this, he's saying that once you have some basic functionality, something that is working, release it to the community. Okay, basically, it allows this user community to build up, somebody to detect, they recognize that this is something useful is coming up from somebody, and this bug fixing, enhancing, tracking down cycle also starts earlier. So, release early and release often is also a key fundamental philosophy to make open source work. Okay, so yeah, so there are stories where there are multiple releases of that software happening within a single day. So these three philosophies, I find it very interesting because and they kind of sum up why open source works. Now, of course, not all open source is implemented this way. Sometimes there are companies or after organizations are picking up to build this development. They might adopt this mechanism to some extent because organizational policies and philosophies. But by and large, if these three principles are followed, your open source will reach the right kind of people. It will also have an organic growth, and that is what we want. And the non-commercial motive becomes very clear because of this mechanism. Okay. Now, the last point is that we I'm sure many people are actually downloading a lot of open source software and we are using it, and there are plenty of them out there and we must use it because that's the whole spirit of open source. But why are we not contributing back? When we build software, why are we not making it available through an appropriate open source license for the world to use? I mean, we are, as a nation, we are very relatively less in the contribution side, but we are very heavy users. So I think we should take a view that whatever software that you are building, if it is not done from a purely commercial point of view, somebody is paying you and it's an IPR only with that paper, fine, then it is bound by those. But one other things that you use when building utilities, tools, something that you do for your PhD work, research work, these are all softwares which once you have, maybe the IPR part of it is done, your thesis is done, you can actually release it to public. Okay, so that instead of it dying away after your work, it will actually might lead to some organic growth. People might find something interesting there. So contribute liberally, adopt liberally, and adapt liberally. That is the philosophy that we should follow, and that can actually create a very vibrant community of open source software and open source community. And many people in open source community will actually vouch for the amount of learning that they get because you're picking up some software which exists and trying to make modification, trying to understand problem is an exciting learning for any software developer. And we are not trying to decode some complicated things because this is open source. We want to help any potential developer to adapt and adopt. So there would be good documentation, the software would be written nicely. Only then this is fun. Somebody is very obfuscated, cryptic code is fun to decode and work with it. So we can create a positive vibes by encouraging others to make use of it, and ensuring that what you are contributing is well documented. And so that is something that I want to leave that message with you, that anything that you are building, which is not purely on a commercial basis, contribute it back. Take good open source software available when you have a requirement. Build on it rather than again building something from scratch and creating yet another thing which possibly will die a natural death. Use what is there so that these things actually grow in quality and the amount of scope. Okay, so take care and we'll see you in another session.